Is phase A, or the first phase now, is it over?
No.
Okay.
It still has quite a bit of time. Phase B would only start in the spring of 2011.
Okay.
But there are works that would overlap at the same time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Well, looks like we will be back with more on Zawana Aoriwa. Stay right here.
And welcome back to Zawana Aoriwa. And of course, if you're just tuning in, we just finished interviewing Chief Rhonda Kirby, and that was an interesting interview.
It was.
Right,
It very was.
If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to call us here at 632-6397. Now we have a very special guest in studio. The 2010 Olympics just ended in Vancouver, but one of our very own, Dega Ditanega, Little Bear, you were in the opening ceremonies for the Vancouver Olympics. Give us the details. How did that all go, and what was that like for you?
Well, an absolute honor to be really down to the point. We've met over 350 Aboriginal youth or Indigenous youth from across Canada, and for a duration of 2 weeks, we're actually practicing with them, sharing with them culture, stories, everything you can imagine within that would take place in 2 weeks.
You know, when you're looking for a gig or a show or any of those things, you know, because I'm trying to equate this like in my context where I'm thinking like, okay, I want to get a show. And usually I have to make phone calls and you know, find people who are related to, you know, the event that I want to be a part of. How does one get involved with the Olympics?
Yeah, what was the process? Yeah.
It was a really interesting process. I was contacted by my sister who actually mentioned that they had an open call for individuals, performers, leadership, more importantly leadership, that were to be flown out to Vancouver. They weren't given exact details on exactly what was happening. They just had mentioned that it's going to be an Indigenous youth gathering. Okay. So I decided to look into it and actually gave the company a call, and which was VANOC, Vancouver Organizing Committee, in association with the Four Host First Nations. Because it was a joint effort between VANOC and Four Host First Nations for the first time in history.
Right,
Indigenous people were recognized as partners. So they decided the most important thing about showing the world Indigenous people was inclusion.
Right.
So through that process, they developed the Indigenous Youth Gathering, and we're pulling individuals from all walks of and all tribes of Canada. So with regards to that, they needed a lot more from the East Coast. I spoke to one of the directors himself, and he had mentioned that they didn't have the quota for East Coast, and more importantly, Iroquois Nation. And the fact that they didn't want to show your typical Hollywood Indians dancing, you know, just traditional, you know, the plains powwow style. So they wanted to bring in all different cultures, specifically Iroquois Nation, and I encourage them as well to come down to, you know, Kahnawake and Six Nations and Akwesasne to recruit right from there. And sure enough, about a week after that, I received back a call saying that he was already in town. So and it was kind of last minute. I mean, there was not really that much advertising and marketing for it. So
did you have to like dance?
We actually didn't have to dance. We just had to sign an application and send in different pictures as well as your leadership qualities and things you have done for the community, for your people, and why you would consider yourself a leader. So after filling out the application, it went into a selection process, and about 2 months afterwards, I found out myself, including Azure Brown, that we were accepted into the IYG 2010.
That's awesome, and that's the Azure that I was talking about on the last program.
My cousin. I got in trouble for that.
And there was actually quite a few people from back home. I know that there was maybe 5 or 6 that applied, and only 3 of us actually made it through. I know that once I got a confirmation, Azure Brown actually got hers confirmed before me. So I was jumping up and down just, you know, for the fact that she was being accepted and she's going on part of, you know, Ganawagi Ardona.
Right,
So
yeah.
it was a big honor.
So what was that like? Like, how did it all, the day of opening ceremonies, you're there.
Well, let me
What
talk
is that
about,
like?
let me talk about more about the build up to the opening ceremonies.
Okay.
Even going, you know, flying out of Montreal, we had the people at the gates holding, you know, signs up and calling our name, and we're like, uh-oh, like what did we do, you know?
Right.
And they start taking pictures with us as if we were athletes, or, you know. So how, you know, we didn't understand how they already knew about it before we even left Montreal.
Right.
Once we got there, we immediately met up with all 350 Indigenous youth and just started the conversation from there. Throughout the duration of 2 weeks, we were actually at the BC place rehearsing back and forth, back and forth.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
we really had no time to ourselves aside from maybe 2 hours break here, 2 hours break there.
Right.
But I mean, those were far and few between. Our itinerary was jam-packed with either leadership training, special presentations, athlete presentations, company presentations such as Nike N1 division, which is a new division under Nike working with Aboriginal and Indigenous people, the N7 project, as well as BC Hydro. There was a lot of work with them. So going up to the days counting up to the opening ceremony were just as important as, you know, the opening night. And it kind of didn't dawn on everybody that we were rehearsing for the opening ceremony, you know.
Of the
I mean,
Olympics.
Yeah.
personally, I'm used to performing and going through, you know, sound checks, stage checks, and it takes time. Without a doubt, with any production, it does take time.
Right.
But I think the day before the opening ceremony, our last rehearsal, it really kicked in when they brought in 60,000 people into the BC Stadium just to watch as participants, just to see how everything was flowing. The night before, they actually brought Brian Adams and Nelly Furtado in to do their stage blocking as well.
Right.
And I think it really kicked in that day and then that night that we're getting ready for an opening, you know, an opening that over, I believe it was 3.4 billion people were watching across the
Oh,
world.
wow. Talk about the pressure.
Listen,
Did you feel the pressure?
I didn't feel personally as a performer, I didn't feel pressure
Yeah.
until we walked out there and you realize, you know, it's not so much the people watching, but the energy that was being created.
see, I definitely want to take a time out there because I want to find out exactly what you were going through at that moment. But we have to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more on Zawana Aoriwa.